Hi, I'm Kaytlyn.
And I'm Brianna.
And welcome to the Readers Clubhouse, where we revisit our childhood favorite content.
Alright, Kaytlyn.
Yes, Brianna.
So, I'm in charge of our question this week, and there's a good reason why I'm asking you. Because I want to know if you, I guess actually a better way to put it, what were your feelings about your college experience? And it's not so much like the learning part, or maybe that is a part of it in regards to the book we're reading today, but just like, how did you feel about your overall experience in college?
Ooh, okay. Spicy. There was a lot I really enjoyed. I made some really good friends, some of which I still talk to, which is really cool. I enjoyed some of my classes more than others. I also, probably didn't study as much as I should have. I'm much better at writing essays than I am at taking exams, just because usually with essays you can do the research and have, there's a lot of editing and going back and forth and repetition, where with exams it was memorization. And there's a lot of things I do remember, but when it comes to memorizing, important things like things for a test, I'm bad at that. So, that was a bit stressful. College was also just kind of a stressful time for me in general.
Yeah.
I don't want to get necessarily too deep because this is not the time or the place.
No, we don't need to do a whole explanation of every bit. Just kind of your overall feelings about it,
I mean, generally, mostly negative. However, there were some really good things that kind of balance it out, I guess.
Yeah. Would you say your college experience was as chaotic as the one that our characters had in the book that we read for this week?
Yeah, just assassins every day. Just constantly,
Somebody trying to unalive you, you having to create protections for yourself because your teachers won't do anything. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that was definitely the kind of experience that I had when I was at college. Yeah.
So, to transition into what we're actually talking about today, last time that we talked, we went over the book, The Dark Lord of Duology, and Dark Lord of Duology is actually a part of a duology, and this one is our last and second book in this duology, The Year of the Griffin.
Yog!
Yog, which, when you said that to me, I think it was today, actually.
It was.
It literally threw me off. I'm like, what the heck is Yog? Like, what the heck? I don't know. It's like, my brain did not go to the abbreviation of the title.
Which is funny, because every time I've texted you about it, I was reading it, I abbreviated it.
Abbreviating it on page doesn't translate into saying it out loud at all, which we should know because we just argued about the way that I spelt names in our overview right before we started this.
You're right.
Yeah. Nobody will be able to tell this because this is a listening platform. I am a terrible speller. And
she is literally so bad at spelling that
I'm really bad.
I don't understand it, Brianna.
I don't know. I'm just one of those readers who love to read but can't spell, and that's been the way since I was a kid. You should get that checked out. I'm over the age of I don't care anymore. So, as long as I understand what's on the page and I fix things that need to, and autocorrect generally works, I'm fine. I don't have to worry about it. So
that's valid.
Thank you. So we're going to get into essentially the book stats is the stuff we're going to talk about here in this section, like we usually do. So the release year for this book was a couple years after the last one. It's year 2000. So turn of the century. This is still written by the author Diana Wynne Jones, who some of you may have known her name from the book Howl's Moving Castle, or if you've never read that book, you've definitely heard of the Studio Ghibli movie Howl's Moving Castle. So, she's the author that wrote this. This definitely is her type of book and stuff. The genre for this book is a fantasy parody, and last week we went over that a little bit, that this duology was a spin-off of a parody fantasy guidebook that she made a couple of years before Dark Lord of Duology and stuff, where it kind of makes a little bit of fun at some of the common fantasy tropes and all that kind of stuff. And we really got to see that in Dark Lord of Duology. There is a bunch of it in this, especially the wizard school aspect. Actually, oh my gosh, Kaytlyn. This was written, like, 2 years after the first Harry Potter book came out.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
What's the huh for, Brianna?
I don't want to get into it because I don't want to talk about any more about HP or anything like that, but,
Do you, I mean, I don't care, I'm going to.
Okay.
Do you think that maybe she was doing a bit of a parody since Harry Potter got so big?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't see anything when I was looking into it, but it's hard to tell sometimes with that, because, like,
yeah,
not, like, an author's feelings about things isn't always going to, like, get talked about or thrown out there and stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me, because the first HP book came out in 1998, I think, is what it was.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. So,
I can look it up right now.
I'm
gonna look it up right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, honestly, that would be so funny if that was the case. And I just, like, I didn't even think about this before I wrote this information down about, like, the book and stuff. So,
Brianna, can I blow your mind?
Yes.
So there were 4 books written with the, the 4th book was written, was published in 2000.
Oh my gosh. So it was already halfway through the series by the time. Oh, I actually, okay.
That's really funny.
Talking a little bit of crap a little bit about some, like, I think it's what's the right way of putting it? Author drama during this decade, especially leading into the 2000s. There was a lot of controversy around HP, not with the more recent kind of stuff that gets talked about a lot with them. But there was a lot of controversy because the HP was getting touted as, like, this really big genre changing thing, when it honestly, if you look at it in comparison to other stuff that was being written at the time or even before that, it really wasn't anything big. It just had in my opinion, it had well-recognized characters, easy for people to pick up.
Yeah.
It got a lot of like, attention and everything. So a lot of authors were asked about her stuff, and I think I actually remember reading something at one point where the author of HP was talking about, like, somebody asked her what she was inspired by, and I can't remember, but I think she said it was something that didn't make a lot of sense. And a different author, and I can't remember if it was Diana Wynne Jones or Ursula K. Le Guin, who again were, like, pinnacles in the fantasy sci-fi genres at the time, especially because they were both women. I cannot remember if it was Diana or Ursula. Basically, were like, I mean, she could have gotten inspiration. It's kind of weird that she is saying she just came up with this on her own, I think is what it was and stuff. So it would not surprise me if Year of the Griffin, which is again the book that we're talking about this week, was maybe a slight response to what was going on with the whole, like, wizard school aspect of all of this.
Well, according to the Harry Potter Wikipedia, they've got a legacy section. There was a basically the influence of Harry Potter on selling the sales of children's literature. It reversed a trend, a 30-year trend, starting in the 1970s. So basically about, like, grim realist fantasy works, sort of Lord of the Rings, which isn't necessarily as grim, but it did sort of inspire this, like, dark, gritty,
like the more epic
era.
Fantasy.
Yeah, where I guess because of the popularity of Harry Potter, it reversed it, where all of a sudden children's fantasy was, like, was flying, and books were flying off the shelves. The market was a lot bigger, and then things like Diana Wynne Jones' Crestomancy series and Diane Duane's Young Wizards series, which were older works in the genre, apparently were reprinted and then became more popular. So it is so fascinating. This is completely irrelevant. Anyway, the point is...
but it's very interesting, and again, it kind of ties in with the stats aspect of this and stuff. We're not going to talk about Harry Potter on the podcast, specifically for a lot of reasons and stuff, but it is interesting to see when this came out and how certain things because of how popular certain stuff was at the time. Again, this is really early on in HP's timeline of stuff that's gone on for the last almost 3 decades now or whatever.
Yeah. Whoa,
it's wild
Brianna.
stuff. Yeah, it's a lot. So
Brianna, that's crazy to me. We are 3 years away from Harry Potter being 30 years old.
Yeah. Which again, we're not going to talk about Harry Potter, but it may come up in some of our discussions because it was connected in some ways, like kind of with what we're talking about with Year of the Griffin. How in some ways I'm not saying this was influenced by Harry Potter in any way, shape, or form of like the writing style or character archetypes or any of that kind of stuff. It just may have been a response possibly to the wizard school thing that was coming up at the time.
Yeah.
Stuff. So moving on from that, we talked a little bit age range wise. That was the last bit with that.
Right.
This still is considered a middle grade, but we kind of tying into back into our transition question. This is about a group of basically college students, or at least upper high school students, with how old some of the characters are.
A couple of them were like 16 or something.
Yeah. So like I want to say Falim might be like 20s possibly and stuff, but like a lot of the other ones are like 20 under and everything, but they don't talk about ages too much for the most part. So but it feels more like a college vibe than it being like a traditional school kind of a thing and stuff. So yeah, so those are our stats for Year of the Griffin. And now I am going to go into our overview. Kaytlyn, is there anything else you want to talk about essentially in regards to our stats before I move on to the overview?
No.
All right, I'm going to get right into it then. All right. Set 8 years after the previous book, Year of the Griffin starts us off at the esteemed University for Wizards, where we meet a group of wizard faculty who are supposed to be teaching the next generation of wizards. The new year is beginning, and the school is having many issues with staying afloat as they are losing money left and right, barely able to make ends meet. The university's chancellor, Wizard Cochrane, deems that their focus should be on producing competent wizards while trying to win over rich benefactors. This year, they have a promising crop of students who may bring in more money, a few of them being a prince, the Emperor's young sister, and Wizard Dirk's youngest Griffin child, Elda. As the new year starts, it becomes apparent that all of these students cannot bring money in for various reasons. It is here that we meet our group of new college-age wizards. Elda, who has grown up much from the last book, Lucan, the son of the king of Luteria, who has an issue with creating holes when he uses magic, Olga, a mysterious and beautiful girl who has expensive furs and such, Falim, somehow related to the Emir of the West, but is there against the Emir's will, Ruskin, a lower caste dwarf who is there to learn wizardry to take down the higher caste dwarves, and Claudia, the young half-sister of the Emperor, who is there to get away from politicians who would want to kill her and she's there to fix her magic as well so that she doesn't get lost every time she tries to go somewhere. Each of them brings a thirst for knowledge, and that begins to turn the university on its head, even more so as the lives they are running from start to converge on the college, who is severely lacking in ability to handle it all. As the chaos starts to come to a head mid-year, Elda's Griffin siblings and Blade return after having crossed the sea with the news that there are more Griffins on the other continent, and many of her siblings have started to find love there. Her human family starts to head that way as well. In the meantime, Cochrane, who has been trying to find a way to get to the moon, finds his moon ship destroyed, and they all feel so bad that they, along with Elda's brothers Blade and Kit, try to magically transport themselves and Cochrane there, but overshoot Moon and land on Mars instead, and are barely able to find a way back before they lose all of their air. While doing this, Lucan and Claudia conquer their jinxes, and they all come back in time to deal with the certain parties who had thought to tear down the university. In the final chapters, the wizard Polycant, the first chancellor of the university, awakens from the statue of himself and deems it is time for him to take over the school once more. All is sorted once again. So,
I'm not gonna lie to you, okay?
Yes.
I read the book, okay? Yeah. I read it. And I think I said something about how it's kind of chaotic.
Yes.
Hearing your summary, it made it even more chaotic. Because obviously there's so much that you couldn't include because you're trying to do a summary.
Had the hardest time, more so than even with Dark Lord, with the Dark Lord book, trying to truncate all of the chaos that happens in this book. There's so much chaos. Mind you, this is one of my favorite books, and it still is, and everything, because I love the chaos that happens in it, because it's just like, bam, 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 something's happening, there's multiple characters, etc. and stuff. Like, I love that kind of stuff, which is probably a big reason why I've always loved Diana Wynne Jones' books, even when she baffles me with some of her choices and everything. And trying to summarize Year of the Griffin, it was a challenge. I was literally like, I should have honestly gone over this one more time, being frank with everybody and stuff, and like maybe tried to like fix a couple of things, but you only have so much time sometimes to do things.
Yeah.
So that's the overview, guys. Sorry it was chaotic, but if you read the book or hear some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in this next section, you'll understand why it was so hard to summarize it in a way that made sense and stuff. So, absolutely. Done with the overview.
Okay, so we're gonna get into, I want to say world building, because I think the world building / story stuff, because for this one, it centers on the university, and you spend most of your time at the university, but there are other places that you go to. So the university is ancient, it's a place where, I mean, it's a university. It's a magical university where wizards go. In the Dark Lord of Dirkholm, and sort of in the 40 years that Mr. Chesney from the first book was in control and having all the pilgrim tours, the university's sole job was to produce wizards who could take people on tours. So you learned the absolute basics, and then you went out on the tour, and that was your entire job. So from the beginning of the book, Querida, which we almost need to do, it's Querida's fault. Okay? It's all her fault. She broke the plate. We tried to stop her. And actually, no, nobody tried to stop her. Actually.
Nobody tried to stop her. Because everybody's afraid of her.
Yeah, everybody's afraid of her. Except for
Dirk. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's the only person who was able to get her out of retirement and be like, hey, something terrible is happening to the university and you need to get out of here with you and your cats.
Yep.
There's just... Okay. Let me refocus because I just have so much rage towards her right now. University. Querida has retired. She's still the chancellor of the university, but has said, I'm going to create a board of directors. They're going to run it. I'm going to peace out to retirement and go to the wastes, and then I'm going to turn them back into a place that people can be.
Yeah,
sure,
which is a good job. She's trying to restore the world, but she does not take proper care or like leave the previous job that she had like
well set up for the next generation.
Yeah. So it's almost like the boss of a company being like, peace out, guys, and just leaving everything as is.
Or leaving it in the hands of someone who is clearly not competent.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Because, it's fine. They've got other wizards, right? They can teach. They can do things. Here's the thing. You have Finn, who is a character from the last book, who's back. Yeah. He's teaching some things. And I don't know what it is with him, but he just decides, you know what I should do is the guy who's actually in charge of the university now, what do we call him again?
His name's Cochrane. That's how they say it in the audiobook. It's Cochrane. Okay. But it is spelled Corcoran in the book.
Because of how British people pronounce their R's. You're welcome to our British listeners. I'm going to call him Corcoran because that's just how I'm going to do it. He, like Brianna said in the summary, wants to go to the moon. His whole thing is doing research to try and go to the moon. He has built a spaceship, essentially, a rocket, that he wants to experiment with to get to the moon. Yeah. Now, the thing is, as anybody who listens to this knows, research is expensive, and being a scientist is expensive. So what happens is the university says, university board of directors, Finn especially, is like, give him all the money.
I will say, I just want to clarify something. It's Finn and the rest of them, but Finn's not the one in charge of finances. It was Dench.
Oh, Dench is the one? So it's Dench's fault.
Dench's fault. He broke many plates.
He gave Corcoran all of the plates to break, is what he did.
Yeah.
Basically,
and Finn is responsible, but he's more of like, he should have been the voice of reason and pushed back on things, and he didn't as much as he should have. He just sat there and stewed. And it's the same thing with another wizard, Myrna or whatever her name is.
Myrna.
Those two, Finn and her, just kind of like complained about Corcoran and the way that he ran things and didn't do anything about it. And then Vermocht, Dench, and Dench. And I know there's other wizards, but these are the only 4 that are named and stuff. Yeah. Vermocht and Dench are just like, Corcoran, he's going to bring in money. And they're just like, oh, I'm good at what I'm doing because I'm teaching the basics and stuff. Which is Vermocht's problem, but... Yeah,
I was going to say, Vermocht didn't even have a say in much. His whole thing was, I'm teaching, and I'm teaching in a very non-dynamic way. I'm teaching in a very plain way, the way that I learned from my time during the tours. Yep. And just, I don't want to spend...
also the youngest wizard.
He's also the youngest wizard.
He's also in charge of almost every first year class.
Yeah, I think he is, except for the ones that Corcoran is doing.
Yeah.
Because he takes the most promising students.
Yeah, Corcoran takes the most promising students as his main class. It's almost like homeroom a little bit vibes.
Yeah.
And then Vermocht teaches everything else.
Yeah, it's even, actually, it's less than homeroom. It's more like the advanced classes.
Oh,
you know how, because that's kind of...
Corcoran basic doesn't really teach advanced stuff at all.
No, but he takes the ones that are further, and he also takes the ones that are from rich families, because he's planning on getting their parents to send him money. And here's the thing, okay? So, yes, world building. This is the whole university. The university is wildly in debt because they've been funding Corcoran's moon research. Querida is gone. She's retired. Yep. She's not in charge anymore. Well, she technically
Nobody's
is,
checking on the university.
Nobody's checking on the university. All of the magical protections of the university have died because, as we said in the last book, the magic of the world started to be drained away by Chesney, and so the world needs time to recover, and part of that is the wizards need to keep up the magical protections on the university, but no one is doing that because who needs magical protections? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then, Corcoran, moon mad, decides, I'm going to write letters to everybody's parents, not everybody's parents, excuse me, to the 6 parents, or countries, I guess, of the students in my new class. Not realizing that none of their families, none of the people they came from, except for potentially Claudia, but even then, that's a whole bunch of things, none of them knew that they were there. All of these kids had run away from home, essentially, with help, some of them, without help, some of them, and decided, I'm going to go study magic at school.
Yeah.
So Corcoran sends out the pigeon mail, and then...
The poor pigeons in this book.
The poor pigeons, yeah. They're, I mean, again, not to compare to, like, Harry Potter, but, like, they're sort of the overworked house elves, and the thing is, I love it because Wizard Dirk is the one who created them, and so I love that towards the end, the pigeons all go on strike, and, like, we're going home. We're not staying here. We were going to deliver these last messages, and then we were going back.
Killed.
We've been stabbed by little tiny men. We've been stabbed by little tiny mice with swords. We're done. We're done with this, and I don't blame them. No. So you've got... Let's go through the main cast and talk about them a little bit, because... We'll transition a little bit into characters here, and then end this section with talking about our favorites, and least favorites.
And this book is like truly ensemble cast. 100%.
Oh heck yeah,
yeah.
It's why talking about the world building is almost impossible without talking about the cast.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you have, let's just start. We start with Elda, right? Yeah. Elda is a recurring character. Or a returning character from last book. She is the youngest, well, not anymore. She's the youngest Griffin daughter of Dirk and Mara. Dirk and Mara have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 children. 2 human children who are older. 2 human children. And then you have 5 Griffin children. And then they have 2 winged cherub babies, I guess.
Basically, yeah.
Essentially. So Elda is the youngest. She has quite strong magic, so she decides to run away and go to university.
Well, she actually didn't run away. She got angry about something, I don't remember what it was, took off into the wastes and let go of some of her magic. Querida noticed, and Querida and Mara sent Elda to the university. And stuff. And when her dad finds out, she actually has the least amount of consequences out of the rest of the cast for, like, what's going on. Yeah. For going to the university and stuff. But yeah, hers was more of a necessity of, like, we don't have time to teach her this. We're going to send her to wizard school.
Let's be real, Brianna. It's not that Querida didn't have time. She just didn't want to.
No, yeah. I mean,
Querida had time.
And Blade were taught by a dragon.
Yes. What's Querida's excuse? Anyway. Yep. Moving on.
A lot of Querida hate in this one.
Look, she's the most powerful wizard in the entire world and literally makes a point about that at the end of this book.
Yep.
And she did nothing helpful until the end. And even at the end, she actually didn't do anything helpful, if I'm being honest with you.
She got rid of, or we're not going to go into that. Yeah.
Okay. So then you have Claudia. She is, as Brianna said, the half-sister of the emperor. This empire is kind of, it's Roman, essentially. It is, you've got these very, Roman Latin names, like Antonius and Titus.
Like, Titus is the emperor's actual name, yeah.
So that's her brother, her half-brother. Claudia is from the marshes.
We meet Titus in the last book, too.
Yes, he was a character from the last book. Claudia was not a character from the last book, if I remember correctly.
Actually, kind of was, but she wasn't named at the time.
She wasn't named, and that's what I mean by she wasn't a character, because she wasn't. Yeah, because there's a lot of random characters in this book, if we include all the ones that were not named.
True. Yes.
Anyway, her mom was a person from the marshes. She was a marsh woman, and the king married her, but then Claudia spent time with her mom. So Claudia is hated by the Roman, or I don't know if just the Empire. We'll call them the Empire.
Yeah. I don't think they have an actual title besides
I don't
Empire.
think so. It was never named, I guess.
Yeah.
And Titus actually sent her away with some money, and also just kind of he wanted to protect his sister because the people of the Empire that were in charge were racist, and they didn't want her around because she had marsh blood, and so she
also has a jinx that does cause some problems, but like it's generally only when she's traveling. Does or she's trying to go somewhere, she can get lost really easily, or something else will happen
very easily. Yeah.
So
for example, they are trying to go to the moon. What happens is Claudia's jinx, because it's a traveling jinx, sends them to Mars instead. And then they end up on the red planet rather than on the moon, and everybody's like, this isn't the moon, and then things go crazy from there. Next you have Olga, and she is sort of Russian.
She's described as a North woman and stuff.
Yeah,
like
sort of like Eastern European.
That
like
kind of
northeastern European, sort of maybe Viking.
Yeah,
Viking. So more than maybe just Russian. She is the daughter of a pirate who has turned not respectable, but like he stopped really doing pirating. He was a pirate during the tours because that was the job that Chesney gave him. And then when the tours ended and piracy was no longer, a job, he turned toward, I believe it was merchant.
He wasn't, I think he was like, oh crap, I can't remember.
He was like an escort, wasn't he? Like a merchant ship escort?
Like he basically was that sounds right.
Hired hand.
Remember. Huh?
Hired transport, like hired protection, essentially.
Something like that, yeah. And he made a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, he was super rich, and he did not allow her to dress like a girl because he wanted a son, and so he would beat her.
Actually, what it was is so I'm trying to remember.
I literally just read this.
But she dressed like a boy before the tours ended.
Yes, because Olaf wanted a son. He didn't want a daughter.
But then after the tours ended and they got rich, he forced her to dress like a girl.
Well, he was going to marry her off. Yes. Yeah. I hadn't got there yet, Brianna.
Okay, sorry. I didn't remember it being explicitly stated he had wanted a son, so that's why I was like, what?
Yeah, it was explicitly stated that he had wanted a son. He didn't want a daughter, because when you're doing the tours and you've got pirates, like, he's essentially, I don't want a daughter, because what's a girl gonna do as a pirate? A lot, actually. But then after the tours ended, he's like, well, I'm not a pirate anymore, so what I'm going to do is essentially sell my daughter and become rich through the marriage, her marriage to one of my cronies, who is a disgusting man. Anyway. And old, yes. And so she decides, I'm going to steal a bunch of his treasure and I'm going to run away. And I'm going to go to school because I have magical powers. And she has the ability to talk to elementals. Specifically, air elementals are kind of her forte. They're the ones that she talked to the most. However, later you learn she can actually talk to multiple different types of elementals. We'll get into that in a moment.
Yeah.
So then you have Lucan, and Lucan and Olga are just one of the many, many, many couples.
There's a lot of couples.
So I don't think I'm confident of the main characters. Ruskin's the only one that ends without
Ruskin's got stuff to do. He's not.
He's got a country to.
He's married to his job / wizardry / taking down the evil government that he came from. Yeah.
Go Ruskin. What a guy.
Anyway, he's up for it.
I agree. He is up for it. So Lucan is the prince, as Brianna said, he's the prince of just sort of your generic European kingdom style. Luteria, very European fantasy country name. Yeah. He has many siblings, and his story is that during the tours, especially the last few years of the tours, his mother took all of the kids and went away into hiding because things were getting too chaotic. So his dad was left all by himself at the castle, and he was a part of the last book, kind of a bit of a coward and a bit of a jerk.
I wouldn't say he was a coward. He was a jerk, though. Like, he was a jerk. Very melancholy. Actually, at the end of the book, something happened. They never explained what it was that triggered the Empire and Luteria were on good terms, but something happened during one of the last mock battles that turned them against each other. And so that's why I wouldn't say he's a coward in
that makes sense.
Normal stuff. He's just very morose and very much woe is me. Things aren't going correctly and stuff. So he's just honestly a little bit selfish. Not a little bit, it's a lot of selfish.
Yeah. And he didn't want Lucan to go to wizard school.
No.
Now, Lucan, as Brianna said, has a jinx as well, where whenever he uses magic, he creates a pit.
Yep.
That's just every spell that he does, it creates a pit as well. And nobody knows why. We find out why. Anyway. So that's Lucan. Lucan and Olga become friends and start dating. And then I think,
did you talk about Falim?
Not yet. Hold on. I'm trying to remember.
Okay. Sorry.
Because there's a wedding at the end of the book, but it's not Lucan and Olga's wedding. It's other people's wedding.
Somebody related to Lucan.
Yes. Shush. Wait. Hold on. Okay, we'll get there. So then we have Falim, like Brianna's. I mean, Falim is the least interesting of the main six, if I'm honest with you. Mostly because his whole thing is that he's the brother of the emir, and of this nation. Sort of, I'm thinking of it in my head as the United Arab Emirates. Mostly because the name Emir, to me, is the first 4 letters of Emirates. So I assumed. And then he leaves, because he doesn't want to be the heir to the kingdom. His brother has 25 sons, and he's pick one of them, and apparently it's a fight between them that they've had many, many times, that his brother wants to name Falim the heir, but Falim is you have a bunch of children. You could literally name one of them. So he runs away, and because of that, his brother sends assassins after him.
Yeah.
Now, Falim is the least interesting character for me, because every time the assassins come around, he's wrapped in a protective spell. He doesn't actually do much, because
which is a testament to the friendship that he has with everybody.
Yes, it's very cute.
Yes.
It does make him useless, because he helps put the spell on himself, and then he's just wrapped in a giant bubble of books. And that's it. Just every time he's in danger is just a giant bubble of books. So he is, interesting character. And the story between him and his brother, like at the end, the brother comes to the university with like an army, and then he and Philem start screaming at each other, and then they reconcile, and it's like, oh, okay, so Philem was actually never really in danger. I have theories about that anyway.
Yeah.
And then finally we have Ruskin. Ruskin is a dwarf from a sort of caste system type thing where the artisans are all the slaves of the forge masters. Ruskin is an artisan. He has wizard powers, and he decides to go to university. I believe he steals some things also, and then
he doesn't steal anything.
How does he have money?
So what happened was all of the artisan families
pulled
together some money and a little bit of their magic. So his magic is a mix of a bunch of people's. That's part of it.
Actually super cool. I forgot about that.
It is really cool, yeah.
And what a cool concept to have. Like, I carry not only the money, but also the magic of my people in me. That's really cool.
It is really cool.
So Ruskin, the dwarves come to be like, this is our slave, we want him back. And then Lucan says, oh, I will buy him off of you with this magical book that I got from my girlfriend, whose daddy was a pirate. Yeah. And then it turns out to be like a dwarven heirloom of some kind called the Book of Truth, where the only thing that you write, if you write a lie in the book goes away. Or not the book goes away, excuse me, the writing goes away. And the dwarves are like, oh yes, we want this, we'll trade Ruskin for that. And then Ruskin ends up being freed and becomes a member of, a citizen of Luteria. And actually, what was cool is at the end when the king of Luteria comes around, he actually, after listening to everything that's happening, gives Ruskin a job in Luteria and says like, oh, you're going to be one of my advisors. So, points for the gloomy king, I guess. So those are the main characters and the worlds and sort of cities that they come from. Yeah. There are a bunch of other characters. Corcoran, we talked about him quite a bit. His focus, he talked about a man married to his job. Like, he wants to go to the moon. That's his whole shtick. That is literally it.
I mean, I would say he's not married to his job. He is married to his research. Because his actual job is to take care of the school, and he doesn't do it.
You're right. He is not married to his job. Yeah. He's married to his hobby.
Yes,
is what
there's
it is.
A better way of putting it, yeah.
Yeah, this hobby of getting to the moon. And then he eventually gets to the moon, right? Because we said earlier that Kit and Blade help them get him to the moon. And turns out he's terrified of heights. Sorry, they don't get him to the moon, they get him to Mars. He literally spends the entire time distraught, screaming, and then when he wouldn't stop screaming, Kit and Blade were finally like, we just have to knock him unconscious with magic. Yeah. We cannot take his screaming anymore. Yeah. Which is fair. So they essentially knock him out, and then he decides, well, no more space research for me. I'm done. Yeah. The void of space is a terrifying place, and I don't want to do it again. Is there anybody else do you think we should talk about before we move into talking about our faves and least faves?
There was a major character we forgot to put in our tier list, Kaytlyn.
Flurry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Yeah, I totally
As I was talking about all the things.
Yes. So I'll kind of try not to spend too much time on this, but it was briefly mentioned in the overview. They never explain why they decided to go across the ocean to this continent and stuff, but all of the other Griffin siblings and Blade decided to go to the other continent that's in this world, and when they get there, they meet a bunch of Griffins and also other humans and everything, and there's this war going on, and they help stop the war. Lita gets married while she's there. She literally, as soon as they run into these people, she finds her one true love kind of thing and stuff. And so Blade and Kit and the others were kind of involved in this, or were very much involved in this war, figuring this out. Some of the Griffins from that side come over. There's a group of them that actually caused some problems for Colette. If you remember, she's one of the older sister Griffins from the last book. And Lita, but Colette is having some really big problems with some of these basically bad Griffins and stuff we deal with. Well, this one Griffin that also shows up, his name's Flurry. he shows up and he's like, nobody notices him ever except for Elda, who keeps seeing him and is like, who are you and stuff. And he spends a good chunk of the encounters that he has being very like subservient kind of to the people around him, which is weird because you find out during the course of the story that he actually is a very powerful wizard and knows his stuff. And you guys may remember this when we were talking about this earlier. There's a wizard named Vermocht who is like the one that teaches all of the like lower year stuff, like first year stuff. And he's a terrible teacher. He's terrible to everybody. He's a jerk. He calls everybody some sort of like derogatory name for the most part. Well, at some point, because of stuff that happened that has to do with some of the jinxes that some of our main characters have, he gets turned into a bar stool, and now they don't have a teacher. And Flurry, who's just been chilling and wanting to stay near the school for various reasons, is like, well, I guess I'm your teacher now. And so, yeah.
We're forgetting the fact that Flurry's the one that turns him into a bar stool.
No, actually, Vermocht turns himself.
But he turns himself into a bar stool because of Flurry. Because Flurry says...
encouraged him to actually fix his mistake because he did something to Claudia. Yes. And by accident, sort of, but because he's an incompetent wizard, he caused an issue and then tried to fix it.
Yeah, after blaming it on Claudia the entire time.
Yeah, which it wasn't Claudia's fault at all.
No.
And so Flurry is an important character because he actually is the one that helps try to start address certain things, but also he has this like habit of trying to make people like him by being like overly humble, which actually puts people off a number of times and stuff, and they're just like, what are you doing? Elda constantly is just like, why? What are you doing? Yeah. Why are you acting like this? Which is great.
And it's funny because it works where he's from. It's obviously something he's had to do to get by where he's from. Yeah. So it's a learned behavior. But it throws people on this continent off because they're all kind of selfish and I mean...
I don't think that's a big part of it. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this. I personally took it as that was his way of dealing with things, especially new people. That was why his behavior was that way and stuff. Because all the other Griffins that show up don't act the way he does and everything.
No, but it's because he was tasked, I guess, with going to follow this group of Griffins across the ocean, and then they were all jerks, and they were terrible to him, and like not just to him, but like to each other.
Yeah, but I don't want to go too into that. He barely interacts with those Griffins on page and everything. And stuff. So we don't know what his actual relationship with them is and stuff.
I mean, he's related to one of them.
He is related to him, but we don't know if it's like personal, actual, like how they interact with each other and everything like that. Suffice to say, he puts a lot of our characters off because of the way he behaves, but he's a very powerful wizard, and there's a couple of moments that get brought up where he's actually like practicing magic and he gets real serious, and then like that people are like, oh, he actually knows what he's doing and stuff. So Flurry is a very important character because he actually, unlike most of the other characters, and it's funny because he comes from like literally the other side of the world, tries to start addressing the issues that the university is having and stuff when nobody else who actually should be doing it is like just they're doing their own stuff and everything. So,
and I believe he was the first one, he's not the last one, but he was the first one to notice what types of jinxes they had, but specifically Claudia, because as Blade and Kit were starting to do their little magic-y thing and you know, translocate to the moon, he came running out like, don't do that, you're gonna go, and then they weren't listening, they didn't hear him, and so they ended up going to the Red Planet instead. Because nobody listens to Flurry. No. So and they should.
Probably the most smartest character in the whole book.
The most smartest.
I know it's a terrible way of putting it, but like he has the least amount of context when he actually like goes into things, but he actually tries to address things and stuff. But there's like some of the other characters that could address things don't because they're ignoring them, or they have other stuff going on. Querida. Or there's like other things going on and stuff with those people and everything. So So
all right, Brianna.
what's all that? Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off. You finished what you're saying.
Oh, that was it and stuff.
Okay. It's now time for you to tell me who your favorite character is.
It's Claudia.
Tell me why.
Tell me why? Oh my gosh. So during the course of the story, our group, we see it mostly from the perspective of the whole group and stuff. And I love Griffins because of this book. I read this a pinnacle part of my, I want to say tween or teen years or something. I can't remember exactly when. It was probably teen. And made me love Griffins. There's other books I've read that had Griffins in it that kind of solidified that and stuff. So Elda, I've always loved Elda. But reading this more as an adult now, I love Claudia because she's kind of like the leader of the group, honestly. And she is like very sisterly to everybody. She says like stuff straight. She's like, this is what like, she's comforting. She's blunt sometimes when she needs to be, but like is kind and all that kind of stuff. And part of it has to do with her background. She's grown up surrounded by politics and having to deal with all of that stuff and everything. And she's so strong. It's really a big part of it. And it has nothing to do with strength because she literally is like probably the physically weakest out of the group, I'm assuming, and stuff. And she just like has to deal with all these things and like but she's extremely actually a very powerful wizard, which gets kind of addressed at the end that she's going to become something big. It actually gets brought up that she's on the same level as Querda, because her and Querda actually are both the same actually, in that, and you don't know this until the end when it kind of is brought up, but Querda actually is half marshwoman also, and their magics apparently are very powerful and stuff. So she is going to be a very powerful wizard once she's older and trained and all those kinds of things. But she's also just a really great character who's there for her friends, and isn't a pushover, and is a very strong person and stuff. So that's why I really, really like her. And then I love Elda because it's fun seeing somebody grow from being this little like little kid to being an almost adult and how she's dealing with everything. She's actually, I want to say Elda's probably the most immature out of the group, if that makes sense. And it's not in a way that's like annoying in my opinion, or in a way that's like makes you cringe when you're like talking to her, but she like has a crush on Corcoran and everything, but it's because he's honestly kind of a dummy. I think is probably part of the reason why she was not attracted to him, but like she had a crush on him and stuff. But like she just was very much, despite the fact she's a giant griffin, she was a lot more like teen girl vibes than Olga or Claudia. And I think that was it's very cute, especially coming out of a giant creature and stuff. Yeah. So I think I love Elda because of like my nostalgia for this book, but also because she's kind of adorable, honestly, and stuff. Even if she isn't the strongest character specifically. She's the strongest out of the group physically, but like she's not the strongest in certain character stuff and everything. So those are my two characters and stuff.
Yeah. That's good. This is a lot harder for me just because I definitely think this, for nostalgic purposes, this was a Brianna read. Because I think I've only read this one other time. I think for me, Olga is probably one of my top favorites. I think it's Claudia and Olga. Claudia for all the reasons that you said, Brianna. Like I truly just think she was a fantastic written character. And what I want to say about Elda actually is that she is the type of naivete that she grew up, during the pilgrim tours, but she still grew up in a relatively healthy, like loving, relatively unproblematic family. And so it's the immaturity of, I've actually just been able to be a kid. And so now this is my time of growing. And so all these experiences I'm having are shaping me into an adult, where every one of the other people grew up in quite difficult situations. And so there is a level of internal growth and early like development that they had to go through in order to survive.
Absolutely. That's actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's such a good analysis of her and everything. I love that.
And it's not a bad thing. It's actually really, really great and super cool that she was able to just be a kid when she was a child. Yeah. And now as she's going off into the world. And it's one of the things that I love is, you know, and maybe I'm thinking way too deeply about this, which of course would not be surprising to anyone. I love that all 5 of the other people having quite traumatic and difficult backstories. None of them look down on her.
No,
for the naivete. None of them look down on her because I think in a way they recognize that this is her time for growing, and also that they're all growing and doing different things. And she is about as fierce and protective as she can get around them. And so there's the sense of there's this massive creature who's quite immature, and yet she cares so much about us. And even though she's not as world knowledgeable as the rest of us are, and she hasn't had as many experiences to sharpen and I don't know, even experiences that have wounded her, she still is like, no, I'm going to protect my friends with my physical strength, my magical strength, whatever it takes to protect them.
That's something when you were talking and then you said it, like, she's like the protector of the group physically and everything. And like, I remember at one point there's multiple times where the others hide around her or like under her wings or something. Like, they use her as like a physical barrier sometimes. And she's totally okay with that. And she even at one point, Ruskin's the shortest out of all of them. She like almost like does the bird nest thing on him, or like tucks him under her wing or whatever. Yeah,
and wraps her tail around his feet.
Yeah, and she like makes this comment about like her motherly instincts kicking in or something. Yeah, it was really funny. But I love, she's the protector. I didn't even think about that, but she definitely is. Yeah.
So Elda's actually not my favorite character. No, I agree with you about Claudia. But Olga is probably mine because, oh man, how deep? Okay, how deep do we want to get? Olga had, other than Ruskin, probably the darkest backstory. Claudia had a really terrible backstory, but like Titus, her brother, was a really big support for her.
She had somebody in her corner.
And Ruskin also had people in his corner.
Yeah.
And as much as there's like slavery, which is horrible, and Ruskin, like, you know, had every right to flee and to you know, make sure his people were going to be free again. Olga didn't, like you said, Olga had no one in her corner. Yeah. And everything that she did was out of her own internal strength. And then to get to college, essentially, and want to use her magic. And one of the things she wanted to do is, she had friends, she had the elementals, but after a particularly bad beating by her father, she wasn't able to talk to them anymore. So the only connection that she had with something other than the people that were abusing her was suddenly taken away from her, which is really, really hard. And I think she had so much strength. One, because she grew up on ships. I love that she joined the rowing crew and would be up early every morning out rowing, rain or shine. Yep. And I also love that despite everything that happened to her, she still was willing to fall in love. And she was still willing to be like, Lucan, there's risk in me loving you, especially finding out you're a prince. Yep. And that is something they have to deal with. But there's still the willingness to take that risk, even though she'd been gravely, gravely wounded by people that she was supposed to be able to trust. Yep. And so I just think that was really cool. And then also her ability to talk to elementals coming back later when they go to, it's she and Lucan get into an argument because Lucan does a princely thing, as in he gets the arrogance. He has to use his princely arrogance to free Ruskin from his dwarven slave masters. And in doing that, he kind of runs roughshod over Olga and doesn't really include her in the planning and in the even in the improvising that he has to do. And Olga's hurt by that.
He's not generally like that. Like,
no, he's generally quite a shy young man, but he knows that in order to free Ruskin from these particular people, he's going to have to kind of use his princely charm to do it. And not just charm, but his commanding princely presence, I guess.
Authority,
yeah. And so, however, in doing that, he hurts Olga. And he offends her, and then because he's young and he doesn't quite understand women, he doesn't understand why she's upset, because he refers to her as his fiance, and she's like, we did not agree to that, and there's a lot of stuff that like we need to unpack before I'm saying I'm anybody's fiance. And so she runs away, and she's crying in a tower, at the top of a tower, which is just relatable, girl.
She climbed. It's not that she's in a tower. She climbs on top of. She
goes
the tower
to the outside of the tower to cry on the roof of the tower. So not only is she on a tower, she's on the roof of a tower.
Yeah, because that's what she used to do when she was on the ship. You should go to the crow's nest and cry.
Yep. And I'm like, girl, get it. I relate so hard. Finding a good place for you to be able to cry, very important. This is coming from someone who does not cry ever. So, you know, I'm slightly hypocritical. But anyway, I just think she's a great character. I think her arc in the book is really good. And I like that even the resolution of her father and all of his goons being turned into mice and then eaten by cats.
Yeah.
There's a sense of justice. Yeah, especially because even as mice, they were jerks. So they got what was coming to them. Cool. Any other thoughts on characters? We're already running a bit long.
Yeah, just I want to last thing about Claudia. I don't know why I didn't bring this up when I was talking about her. One of the other really big things with Claudia is her journey of understanding her jinx. Yeah. And I'm not going to go into all the little bits with it, but like we said earlier in the overview and other stuff, her jinx gets her essentially lost or like messes when she's trying to travel anywhere. And she actually had that experience of trying to travel from the Empire to the university. Like the map was lost randomly, all this other stuff. Well, she's at a crossroads of she's two halves of these groups and everything. And it actually kind of ties in. I'm not going to go deep into this because we're both white people. So it's like, we don't have any experience to speak into this really, but like I've heard stories of people who are half white, half something else, or like two halves of two different ethnicities and everything and stuff. Yeah. And, just some of their experiences, and that's like if you have friends who are of like two different worlds, or like they have a mix of things and stuff, like people you may know that, or if you yourself are somebody who's doing with that, like you'll understand where she's coming from, because she's trying to deal with the fact that like she doesn't feel like she belongs in either of these groups and trying to find her place and stuff, and that actually influences her jinx and why she is like struggling with that. And there's like a whole bunch of other things to it, but I love it when Blade and Kit help her, and Lucan, but we won't go into that part, address that, and she's just like, oh, it's just this, and then he like kind of like pokes her some more, essentially with like making her think about stuff. She's like, oh, and she realizes like her growing up is what caused her jinx and it traumatized her, and the jinx is like this magical response to that, because, and this is the thing that I really liked that he brought up, is she has a very powerful transmutation ability, which is what part of her magic was the most affected by her trauma and stuff, which is very interesting and stuff. And like that, you reminded me that when I was like, when you're talking about Olga and like her journey and everything. And it just is really cool because Claudia is still such a strong person despite the fact that she is she's like being tugged on both sides by these two aspects of her life, and also trying to learn magic and all this other stuff and everything. So sorry, that was my last one.
No, I think that's really great. And we'll get into the nostalgia in a second. One of the big things for me that I didn't notice the first time I read this book, probably because I read it before I got a degree in psychology. Lol. Is actually how much discussion about trauma and the effects of trauma in the things that you do. And even though it's magic and it's being a little bit silly and it's, you know, poking fun at sort of the magic school genre, it was a surprising thing for an author from, you know, she's Diana Wynne Jones, like 80s, 90s, 2000s, to write about trauma and the way that trauma affects you as you get older. And especially to do it in such a interesting way as your magic and the way that you cast spells. And even with Olga, she didn't have a jinx, but her trauma made it so she wasn't able to hear the elementals.
Yeah.
With Claudia, the because of her trauma around being torn between two worlds and not feeling like she belonged in either one meant that whenever she went places to visit, she got lost. With Lucan, it was because every time he saw his father, he wanted to just dig himself into a pit and disappear because he didn't get along with his father. Yeah. And so there's all these things that are just super fascinating about how trauma plays out in our lives, and especially in relationship with other people, that I think, even though who knows if Diana Wynne Jones was really, trying to hammer home these things. I think she was, because there was discussion about these things.
I will say, as somebody who's read a number of her books, I feel like that's a thing that she does, has done a couple of times. I haven't read everything of hers. I actually, being fully honest, I love her work, but there was one of them. There's one quartet that we may talk about in the future that baffled me. Okay. And then there was another book that I didn't finish because it just wasn't vibing with me and stuff. But generally the stuff that I really enjoyed of hers does tap into, a lot of the time, the character's past informs the character's present, and the choice they make to sometimes conquer the things that they were dealing with, their trauma or whatever, or utilizing some of those strengths that maybe they left behind. I feel like she's really great at that and stuff. Yeah. But that might be something we discuss kind of more as we go along, as we read more of her stuff, because we will be coming back to her at some point and everything. So, yeah. Yeah. All right, Brianna. It's time, because this is already, again, I think going a lot longer than we... I'm pretty sure every episode has gotten slightly longer. I think we need to rein it in a little bit. What's your nostalgia rating, Brianna? 5 out of 5. You said earlier, this is a me book and stuff. Yeah. So this is a book that has stuck with me for years, and I didn't even remember all the reasons why. It's the reason why I love Griffins, and I even back then when I read this, I loved the friend group in it. Yeah. How much how different each of them were, but how similar they were, and their thirst for knowledge and the kind of challenge the status quo and stuff. And I read it during a time in my life where everything was kind of crazy. It's the same thing with the Redwall series and stuff. So it was one of those ones that it just hit all of my things, and it was it was so much fun to read. For me, again, it was chaotic. You'll talk more about this in your nostalgia rating and stuff, but I loved it. I love how chaotic Diana Wynne Jones' books are, honestly. It's just one of my favorite things. I know it makes it a rough read sometimes for certain things and stuff. I fully admit that, but I adore the chaos of it at the same time. So, that's me. Yeah, I think for me it's probably a 3. Because I probably read it one time before, maybe twice, but there was a bunch of times where I would start reading and I'm like, oh, we're wrapping it up. Oh, we're wrapping it up. And I'd look at the page count and I'm like, I am halfway through the book. Yeah. This feels like there's so much more. And then Brandon and I were talking in the car the other day, and I was just like, there are some things that she adds that really do just feel so when you're cooking, right? Sometimes you follow a recipe, sometimes you're just winging it, and sometimes the recipe, but you're still just adding a little bit in. It feels like she went to her refrigerator and then she went, what can I put into this to make it even more interesting a flavor? And she looked at everything in her cabinets, in her refrigerator, in her spice drawer or whatever, and she said a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and then all of a sudden I'm halfway through this recipe and I decide, you know what, I'm also going to add in a random beautiful woman on a dragon. That's what I'm going to do. And you know what else I'm gonna do? Just to add a little bit of spice into this, halfway through the book be like, hey Elda, all of your siblings were on a different continent, and guess what? Now they're all in love. Yep. Or everyone's in love with that. And there was just some moments that I'm like, what the freaking heck is happening? Yeah. Again, so the nostalgia is sort of the Dark Lord of Dirkholm was something I read a couple times when I was younger. I remember it. It was really fun. I love the idea of another world being a theme park, and then, the people of that world rebelling against that. Yep. And I also love the idea of, okay, this is done now, and we have an entire world to pick back up, so what are we going to do about it? I do think it was
utter chaos. And also the fact, okay, look, I love romance, and I know we talk about that I love romance, but I did not remember how many freaking characters in this book fell in love or were like, we're going to get, okay, because here's what happens, okay? Spoiler alert, if you want to know, okay? So Claudia, I'm like, okay, she's like, you know, whatever. No romance at all. All of a sudden, Blade appears, and Blade's like, dang, she's cute. I like her. You know what I should do is ask her brother if I could date her. And the brother's like, sure, I'll let you date her, but only if you'll help me date Lucan's sister. And then it's like, okay, interesting. So that's 2 couples just right there, okay? 2 couples. And then you have Olga and Lucan. The OG couple, love them, support it.
They're great,
OTP or whatever they call it. Fantastic characters. Okay, and then you have Elda, and Elda's just this young girl. She's just bebopping around, doing her thing, and then all of a sudden this, you know, fancy Griffin wizard from the other continent comes over and is like...
Let's clarify, he's not fancy. He looks normal. Like, literally...
You're right.
He's not like the most handsome Griffin or anything.
He's not the most handsome Griffin. Yeah. You're right. My bad. You're right. However... Even though he's just normal looking, and that's his whole shtick is I look really normal, I'm small, so that nobody notices me so I can do what I want. She's so into that. And he's like, she's cute. And I'm like, you are
She's
decades.
not into it. She thinks he's weird.
No. She is into it.
What?
And yes, because at the end of the book, I can't remember which of her brothers is talking to Flurry, but
it's Kit.
Flurry had to go all
Blade.
big, like... you know, and get all assertive to go do something. And then Elda was like, ooh, he can be assertive. Okay. And hair flip.
But it wasn't like she was fawning over him all of a sudden. She just like, he changed her perspective for a second. Yes.
She's so into him.
Okay, whatever.
Okay.
We never get to, there's no more books in this series, so nothing ever comes of this.
That doesn't matter. It's implied that there's something that's going to happen because both Blade and Flurry, it is Blade because Claudia and Elder are still in school and they still have to finish their wizardry thing. So Blade is like, we're going to have to wait. Flurry, you and me, bud, we're just going to have to wait till they're done. We'll visit them at school, whatever. And Flurry's like, a bro. He knows he knows what's up. And that's like, y'all, can everybody fall in love? And then
I loved it.
I'm sure, of course you did, Brianna. Of course you did. This is where you and I differ as people.
That's very true.
And then there's a wedding because the wizard Polycant is like, I have the authority to marry people. Yeah. So you know what, Titus, brother of Claudia, you're in love with Isidel, who's the sister of Lucan. And since the Empire and the kingdom are at odds, you know what will save it? A marriage. Because marriage saves all issues. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, Diana?
Kaytlyn, comedies are supposed to end with a wedding. That's the way it works in Shakespeare.
That's actually a really good point.
Tragedies end with a death, and comedies end with a wedding.
All right. I'll give you that one.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Also, I love how you're like, okay, we should probably wrap this up, and then you spent a good 5 minutes talking about all of the characters that got together at the end.
Shut up, Brianna. All right. Anything else to add?
Nope. I think that's. Tirade? I think you're talking about how way too crazy it got with the pairing up of people at the end is the cherry on the top.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Readers Clubhouse, aka where Kaytlyn gets mad about how many people fall in love in one single book. If you like this discussion and you want to hear more, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify every other Friday. You can check the episode description for our social media and join us in the Clubhouse next time as we discuss... I don't think we talked about what we were discussing next time, Brianna.
It's supposed to be a guest episode, Kaytlyn.
Oh my gosh, we're going to have a guest!
Yeah.
Wow. Who knows who that's gonna be? We don't yet. Find out on social media. What I might do is add this in
Dub
later.
in. Yeah.
Yes, fine. Dub in. Yeah. Okay.
If you have to, it probably would be a good idea if you just reread this whole bit with the dub in.
I will keep some of it.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Well, that was all. I guess we can stop recording now. Hi guys. Kaytlyn here. I decided to keep our outro because I found it funny, but I did want to tell you what our next episode would be. we will be reading and discussing The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo with one of my good friends, Cavi. We'll see you guys in the Clubhouse next time.